Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us on Facebook Live this afternoon. I am Carolina Quesada with the Nonprofit Partnership, welcoming you to another segment of Our Stories, Our Time. In this series, we interview nonprofit leaders to understand how organizations are navigating through the challenges of these current times. And, these interviews have allowed us a glimpse into the issues and situations facing local communities. And by way of showcasing nonprofits, we're making an effort. Wants to thank the Port of Long Beach for their generous support of our series. And again, if you are watching us live on Facebook, we invite you to engage with us. Leave a question, leave a comment for our guest today. We'll make sure to weave it in the conversation today. So without further ado, just want to welcome Goretty Ramos, Executive Director of Pathways to Independence. Welcome, Goretty. We're thrilled to have you.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me here today.
Yeah, well, we're really anxious to get to know more about Pathways to Independence, the organization you're leading. So give us a little bit more background on the kinds of programs and services that you offer.
Sure. So Pathways to Independence is an organization that serves the Long Beach and Orange County area. And our mission is to transform the lives of disadvantaged single young women through our programs, through our varied programs, and they include education, therapy, mentoring, housing, and healthcare. And the goal of these services is really to break that cycle of abuse and poverty that the women that we serve go through. Really, our program focuses on women who are survivors and who have overcome quite a lot of adversity, whether it's in their childhood or in their past, and who are now focused on gaining higher education. So that is who we focus on. That is who we serve.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And it seems like, and anybody visiting your website will see that commitment to higher education is definitely a must, right?
Absolutely. That's really our goal. We are essentially a scholarship program, but we do not think of ourselves as a scholarship program because we really are a wraparound program. We understand that in order for the clients that we serve, in order for the young women in our program to be successful academically, there's quite a few barriers that they need to address and remove to gain that higher education. So that's kind of where our programs are really focused. They're focused on removing those barriers. So
Yeah.
for example, in terms of our education support, because all of our clients are students, they all are in higher education institutions of their choosing that are local. We really support their tuition. So what we do is all of our participants apply for financial aid and receive financial aid. But if there is a gap between their financial aid and their actual cost, which includes books, supplies, not just the tuition, but all the things that they need to be successful students, we bridge that gap between their financial aid and their actual cost of education. So what that means is that somebody who goes through our program can graduate from Pathways and graduate from college with a bachelor's degree and no actual debt accumulated during their stay in
That's
school.
a big deal. That's a huge change
Huge,
maker.
absolutely huge. And that's just the very first thing of what we do. So absolutely, that is one of the
Mhm.
things that to me is very impactful because we really are sending the young women out into the world without that burden of the debt that they accumulated through student loans. So there's other ways that we support our students so that they don't have to go to student loans and access, that and incur that debt. Not only do we support them, like I mentioned, in their book supplies, tuition, We really care about their education, and we require that our participants maintain at least a 2.5 GPA. They need to be full-time students and maintain a 2.5 GPA. But honestly, about 50% of our students have a 3.5 GPA or better. We don't require that. That's just kind of the outcome of being in the program and their own work and their own effort and just their own academic abilities. But we definitely, we care about that. So because we want them to succeed in their classes, we also provide tutoring support so that they can, if somebody struggles with math or English or sciences, they can go to that tutor 2, 3 times, a week if they need to in order to pass that test or do well. We support our students in other ways as well. They're not education related. As I mentioned, every single young woman that comes to our program just has survived quite a bit. This includes homelessness. This includes neglect, abuse, at home or outside of the home. Some of them are in recovery from drugs and alcohol. So everybody has quite a bit of a past that they're carrying with them. So the other really big important part of our program is our therapy support. Our participants are provided with a therapist that they see on a weekly basis for the duration of the program. And just to kind of give you an idea of the duration of our program, our participants are with us typically, depending on their education path, 3, 4 years, some even 5 years if they're science majors. So they're with us that's a significant portion of their young lives. 3 to 5 years. And for those 3 to 5 years, they're receiving that weekly therapy. Along with that weekly therapy that's going to help them address trauma, they're also doing weekly mentoring. The mentoring component is so important, and I will kind of touch on mentors a little later too, but we absolutely love our mentors and we rely on them a lot. The mentors they provide guidance essentially. They're kind of an anchor for our clients, and they meet with the clients. They talk on the phone once a week for the duration of the program as well. The housing component, I think this is another big reason why the young women in our program don't end up with debt, is because we absolutely assist them with that housing element. We are able to house some of our clients. We own a couple of buildings where we house a good percentage of our clients. The young women who don't live at our buildings, they get a rent stipend that helps them mitigate the cost of their rent. So we have just, transportation assistance and healthcare. I think we just really design our program to try to capture anything that could go wrong.
Yeah, and actually that's a great point you just made there, because anybody listening to this will see clearly that your program model is one where, there's almost like this as holistic as possible approach to serving these young women, and to ensuring, more so than anything, that there is success at the end of that road, that they did have those supports, and those resources, really importantly, the resources to be able to get through school. And I think a real transformative part of any young person's life, those early adulthood years.
Yep, absolutely. I think one of the little things that you don't think too much about, that we always hear our clients comment, the impact that it has for them, is actually the transportation support. Here in Southern California, public transportation is not really a thing. It's there, but not really. So our clients absolutely need their transportation to be able to get to doctor's appointments, the therapy, the school, work, all of that. So we provide transportation support. The clients that come into our program without a vehicle are provided with a used certified vehicle that our mechanics double check to make sure that it's in good use, and that is their vehicle to keep for them. It's their vehicle. And we have mechanics who are volunteers out in the community who maintain those vehicles. And that, just the vehicle maintenance, is one of the things that our students cite often, the impact, the fact that they didn't have to worry about how they were going to pay for their oil change because our mechanics do that for them. That if their car started making a funny noise, they didn't have to then consider what are they going to give up in order to be able
Mm-hmm.
to take care of their transportation. There was somebody there that just did it, and it didn't impact them. They didn't have to then think about how to
Yeah.
solve that problem.
It's interesting because all those things you're naming off are at the foundation of what a quality of life is about. Do you have a safe place to stay? Do you have even just like to your point in LA or in this, Southern California, you how this
Hmm.
quality of life, how that can impact us as well. So for these young women already going through very trying situations, again, to
Hmm.
have the value of all those support networks is a really big thing. Going back to earlier, it could be a real change maker for them. Goretti, tell us more about how are young women signing up for your program. What are those pipelines to be able to engage and interact with pathways?
So, Pathways to Independence, one of the things that we kind of like to say is that we are one of the best kept secrets of Long Beach and Orange County. And we are, but we are no longer proud of that. We want to change that. We want to let people know that we're here, that we exist, that we have been doing this work for now 30 years. We serve 42 clients at a time. And like I mentioned, these are long term programs.
Hmm.
So we just had a graduation where we had five graduates who all five got their bachelor's degrees. Four of them had a 3.7 GPA at graduation. I mean, these are just very impressive women, and
Yeah.
they don't hear about us. It's really hard for clients to find us. The way that clients currently find us is really through other participants in the programs. So other clients who are already with us, they will notice a classmate, they will notice somebody who seems to be academically determined but struggling. And so
Hmm.
most of our referrals are really our own clients bringing in peers who they see in their school who would need the program. We
Word of
also,
mouth.
of course, have absolutely word of mouth. We also get referrals from our many volunteers and providers that are out in the community that are aware of our programs. They will also, if they run into, a young woman that they identify could use us, they send them our way. But over the last year and a half, we've actually been actively engaging in reaching out to local nonprofits, to get to know them, to let them know
Hmm.
about our services. So we have started to create referrals through local Long Beach nonprofits, actually. So some of our partnerships are here where we are trying to connect with them and get them to send potential clients our way as
Yeah.
well.
So, wow. But what a story you're telling, though, around just the value of relationship too, and deepening those relationships. That historically, most of the young women you're serving are coming from, through referrals of the young women you're already serving, and also through your
Hmm.
network of volunteers as well. But really appreciate you sharing too that there's been a very concerted effort, which I'm sure will grow, to connect to other nonprofits. To kind of continue to create those pathways of, look, we're here in the community, and we'll be a partner in providing these kinds of services as well.
Hmm.
So, Goretti, turning a little bit now more to volunteers and mentors, give us a bit more of an idea. And actually, you already touched on it, where mentors are a really important part of your program. Actually, tell us more about the work that they're doing.
So our mentors, or in general, our volunteer network is a large support network. So Pathways was built on very much a volunteer model. I was the first full-time employee when I was brought on board as an executive director a few years back. Since then, we've grown a little bit in the staff department, but overall, we're still largely volunteer based. So we absolutely depend on the community to support the young women to be able to succeed in these goals. So our mentors are just such a crucial part of our equation because our mentors are just people, women out in the community who have the time to connect to the women that we serve, and to provide, again, it's that general life guidance, and networking and the little things that you can ask somebody that you trust, that you think would know, that you can't really ask maybe a peer. So really the job of the mentor is not to provide the emotional support, the therapist does that, but really the more real life, the real life things, the real life issues, assistance with budgets, figuring out my budget. If I'm having a hard time, going to a meeting because I'm shy, maybe my mentor is gonna help me walk through some role playing or tips on how to get through shyness, things like that. So really, they provide that guideline, that support, but the networking aspect is also very important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that our clients, because you come from a disadvantaged background, because of your life experience, many times you didn't really form true connections to the community and to a bigger network. So a mentor is a way for the client to have an anchor, to have a place to connect to the community, and we absolutely encourage always our mentors to advocate for their clients, um, to introduce their clients to networking opportunities when possible,
Mm-hmm.
to let us know of jobs, things like that. So that's the big role of the mentor, is to just be both an anchor for the Pathways program, but also for kind of a wider social life
Mm-hmm.
that the client might not have known.
Mm-hmm. And I think what you're speaking to as well is this need to help support the creation of social capital. And that's been a big area of conversation, I think, in youth-based organizations and in communities for some years now. How social capital and being able to tap into those networks, as you're saying, those resources, that's a big thing. I mean, that's a big part of how young people are able to really integrate in ways that they will hopefully be successful, at whatever venture they launch. So Goretty, let's kind of turn now the conversation and look at the impact of COVID-19. Tell us, what's been going on at Pathways to Independence since the pandemic broke out.
So I jokingly keep telling people that 2020 did not count. So anything that happened during that year, we're just gonna toss right in the trash and pretend
Yeah,
it never happened.
didn't happen.
We absolutely were impacted by the pandemic. Pathways, the organization, not so much. And the reason why we Pathways, me, my staff, or volunteers were not so heavily impacted is because the way that Pathways was already built and designed, we already don't have an office. We already were remote working since before the pandemic. So for us, the adjustments had already been made. We already do teleconferencing. We actually were not doing Zoom before the pandemic. Zoom did become a new thing to us as
Mm-hmm.
well. Essentially, any meeting that used to be in person, which we would have in-person meetings, became a Zoom meeting, and any meeting that already was a phone conference just remained that way. So we didn't feel as much of a hit, or clients, on the other hand, or participants, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in general, in terms of the personal impact that it had. Of course, it did personally impact us in different ways. But our clients were just, because they're students, they were in the middle of a college semester. Some were finishing prerequisites to transfer. I mean, it completely disrupted, for all students across the board. It had a big impact. And so our clients felt that. They felt the adjustment, the students had a hard time adjusting, the teachers had a hard time adjusting. And as a consequence, it did create more crisis for our clients. Some didn't know if their academic programs would be able to move forward and continue. Some didn't, couldn't, had a hard time adjusting to
Wow.
an online format.
Right.
And because of that, we saw higher levels of crisis, higher levels of need to kind of seek support from therapists and from mentors and from the team in general. And unfortunately, another unfortunate consequence of the pandemic is that we did lose a few clients that dropped out of the program, which is very unusual for us. It's very unusual. It does, occasionally happen, but mostly when a client comes into the program because it's hard to get in, they
Right.
rarely will drop. But because our students had to make big life adjustments, move out of state, back home, do big things to cope with the pandemic, we did, again, unfortunately, just, and I think this happened across the board, schools lost students that are not coming back yet.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
we
So
definitely
true.
felt that.
Wow.
Mhm.
So again, from that client perspective, you definitely saw how the effects of the pandemic just in many ways ravaged, and there was, some
Mhm.
negative consequences, unfortunately. But it's also
Mhm.
interesting when you look at it from an organizational perspective where you had already adopted that
Mhm.
model that allowed you then to work from home and allowed you to be very nimble in that way, I think. So it's interesting as you look back over the last year and a half now, how a lot of those shifts or organizations that were able to make those quick shifts, it didn't really disrupt so much, the administration or the staffing or the programming per se. But in your case, with some of the young women that had to probably put a lot on hold, certainly it
Mhm.
will impact, right? And it'll impact their ability to stay in the program too.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest impacts to us, the organization that came out of the pandemic, is actually not only did we look at better ways to support our students, but one of the big things that I'm super happy about is actually we realized the necessity of communal space.
Mm,
As much as I've talked about networking and we have housing and we have buildings, we didn't have designated social communal space within our program. And as the pandemic wore on and people were stuck in their homes and they struggled to study and they struggled, they couldn't interact with each other, it became really obvious that we had a need here, that we needed a COVID safe way for people to be able to see each other, get out of their own heads. So, as a consequence, we are in the middle of, we've turned one of our living units into a student lounge, essentially. It started with the pandemic, but we're going to keep it. It's going to become a permanent part of what we offer and the support that we have. So we've created communal space. We've created the student lounge has fridge and a kitchen that we actually keep stocked for clients so that they have coffee and snacks and cereal and things that they could access while they're studying. It's fully equipped with internet. So we're really looking again at how do we embrace the needs and the changes that need to be made so that
mhm.
again our clients can succeed.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's a very real way of you sharing how, the pandemic has also been, in a way, a teacher. Because I think that what you're talking about here, and if we had more time to unpack, communal spaces, well, there's lots to talk about there and the value of that interaction, not just as
Hmm.
a space where it's transactional, but a space where hopefully there are connections happening, right? One way or the other. So,
Hmm.
Goretti, looking at the last few minutes left on our interview, if you can believe time just flies by,
It
tell us
does.
a little bit more about how it's been collaborating with other organizations. What are the lessons learned that maybe you want to share with us around collaboration?
Well, I think that we have started to identify some partners that we see where we kind of match. I think that collaboration is something that for us here at Pathways is new. We've done some minor collaboration, but as I mentioned, we've kept ourselves very much a secret. We kind of grew within our little group and our little community, and we didn't branch out much past that. So we absolutely, that has been a very, very real effort that we've been making over the last year and a half. Again, 2020 took its toll on that effort because we couldn't connect with people personally for quite a while. And even now, we're barely getting back to it. But that collaboration and connection with other nonprofits, just letting them know what we do, learning what they do, and being able to now, we're starting to see the fruits of those labors. As I mentioned, we just had a graduation, and the way that a client comes into a program is when the spot opens up. So when a client graduates, that means a new one comes in. And I believe we've accepted about 8 participants this summer, wow. And about half of them are coming from these new partnerships, from these new referrals here with the nonprofits in Long Beach. So I'm super excited to start to see the larger community trickle into our programs and trickle into our building and just be here. People who have never heard of us, who know nothing of us, other than the little they've been able to see online. I'm just very excited.
The power of networks, right, Goretty?
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
making enough time to invest in building those relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it does take time. Yeah. It absolutely takes time.
So Goretty, as we wrap up, what are your thoughts around what you would like to see, for the young women you're serving, as we're, I think, as a society, kind of struggling with reopening, but we are reopening in many ways, especially with vaccines becoming a lot more available and more people getting vaccinated. So what are your hopes for them?
I really do hope that they start to see this change in the positive direction that it's going for their lives. I think for a second, we all were holding our breaths to understand if even the goal that you're pursuing now is worth it. I think that's a question that they had to keep reevaluating. Is this a time to pursue school or not with a crisis? And I think that as things are changing and we're coming out of it, I absolutely see some of that renewed hope that we're going to be okay, and that higher education really is still a worthy goal. So I'm just excited to see them stay on their path. And when they stay on their path, they are amazing in what they are able to do. So that's all I need from them. Stay focused.
Thank you so much, Goretty. Before we let you go, could you share with us the best way to get in touch with you or to learn more about what you're doing? Where should folks go?
Yes, absolutely. So our website is actually the best way to connect. Okay. Our contact us information goes directly to our admin assistant, and then she usually sends those communications to me and sends them out to whoever they need to. So that is the best, most central way to start.
Excellent, thank you. And there's an intake form, I think. If you want more information, they kind of can fill in the information. So good to know that'll get over to you rather quickly. So yes, anything coming up for Pathways Pathways to Independence that you would like to share with others?
Oh, absolutely. So we have our giant annual event that has had to shrink in size because of the pandemic. We hold an annual event in the Long Beach area the first Saturday of October. So this year, I believe, is October 2nd. Our tickets are going to be for sale. Please visit our website. But our October event is a huge party. Everybody loves this party. Last year, of course, we were fully virtual. This year, we're going to be back in person. I'm not doing the same type of party that we've always done. It's going to be a little bit of a, reduced capacity, and we're doing things a little different, but it is no less fun. We have an amazing theme of traveling. So we actually are going to have 4 available parties to choose from, and each one has a theme. There's London, there's Paris, there's, I think, Spain and Greece are the other countries. So it is a wonderful party that we have planned.
And word on the street already is that every year, that big annual event sells out fast.
It
So anybody
absolutely sells
watching,
out.
yes,
Go start looking for
encouraging.
your tickets.
Yes, like now.
Absolutely start looking for your tickets. We have when we have our big annual event out in the street, we host about 600 people, and we do sell out. So yes, to look for your tickets because this will be a smaller event, very impactful but smaller. So thank you.
Yes. We so appreciate your time today, Goretty. Thank you. I think learning more about pathways and what you're doing with young women and all of these nuances of what's had to shift and where you're going. It's so just, our hats off to you and congratulations for all your leadership and for everything that you and your team do. So thank you again, Goretty, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And everyone, we will see you next time. Thank you.